We ready? All right. Hey, everybody, we are here for the January LUZO committee meeting. I'm just gonna go around and see committee members and then go from there. So Stephanie Reese is here, Rick Moores is here, I see Dave online, I see Jerry online. And that's about it for the committee for today.
Somebody's missing a payroll.
A few things on the agenda that we're gonna go over today would be, I have an updated draft of the discussion draft for the short-term rental licensing ordinance that we've been discussing, so we'll talk about that. I have probably 9 other warrant articles, maybe 10 other warrant articles. Here comes Katrina. And then we have a zone change request that we're gonna go over, and then that's about it. Also, I think there's a board of selectmen's meeting tonight, so we really only have until a little before 6. So I'm gonna try to be efficient, if that's okay with everybody on the committee. The first thing that I did want to see if it was okay if we just head forwarded to everybody. Hopefully, did you guys get all this? That somebody wanted to be a member, there was an applicant for a member of the LUZO committee, Alan Kimmerly. And I forwarded everybody's stuff. I don't know exactly what the process is. This is the first time we've ever gotten something forwarded to us, so.
Does it go to the select?
It goes to the.
Yeah, but I thought it would come to us first, just to see what we thought about.
Oh,
Right, if we had 300
But-
members on this committee, then
Yeah,
there might not be room, but.
But ideally, it does gotta go to the selectmen, but I
Yeah.
did want us to look at it
Oh,
first.
okay.
as a committee.
Oh, okay.
So
Did
if,
you look at it?
yeah, I mean,
I don't.
yeah, so I could easily say, committee looked at Alan's application and welcome participation
Right,
in the minutes. Is that good? Looking at Jerry and Dave too.
yep, works for me.
Great, okay,
I did.
all right. So the other thing, I might take this out of order a little bit, because I know a lot more people are here to talk about short-term rental licensing ordinance than they are to talk about road setbacks and additional uses. Yep.
So I know there.
So, yeah, can we get you guys, just because we're taking notes, we just want to make sure we get everybody's attendance, so.
The names, what's your name?
Robin Lane. Leslie Laney.
Great, thanks. Is that, so is it okay if I kind of burn through what I think are the easy warrant articles, and if something becomes complicated, we'll just table it and get the short-term rentals, is that all right? Works for everybody? Works for you guys? All right. So the first one, I forwarded you guys a bunch of them, and one of them I'm calling establishment of use. Some of them, like the first 6 we talked about last time. So we talked about and approved last time a warrant article to amend the land use ordinance that would extend the deadline for conditional use approvals from 12 months to 24 months. We reviewed and approved taking out the air landing sites from the performance standards in the land use ordinance because they're not an allowed use anyway. We reviewed section 3.5 footnote P to clarify that the 1,000 square foot minimum lot area only applies to lots in the village of Northeast Harbor. We reviewed and approved lot access dates, which is basically creating or just changing the date for the changes that we made last year, I think, regarding access to lots that are, so there's lots before a certain date, you can do certain things, lots after a certain date, you have to do other things. That's sort of for roads and access. And then we think we reviewed and approved a warrant article that that clarifies that additional 1- and 2-family dwellings require standards for each additional 1- and 2-family dwellings, and that you have to have the second that additional standard to kick back in. So the other thing, one other thing we talked about And then I had to make the correction on was the road setback. So where does the CEO or the town in policy review or start measuring setbacks for? So I did make a quick modification of that. It's actually pretty straightforward. So the new change would be setbacks from public and private roads are measured from the edge of the road surface or of the legally established right of way if no road exists. So essentially, if you recall the conversation that we had with Kim, she measures setbacks from the edge of the road surface. The actual setback is different depending on whether or not it's a public road or a private road, but where you measure from is basically from the edge of the road surface.
So what happens if the driven road is not the actual property line? Because you know how roads, like dirt roads move?
Yep, sometimes what we've done is put both setbacks on. Yeah, and then the more strict applies.
And we also discussed that the, where the driveway is the frontage, correct?
Yep, but I don't.
And
think-
not the,
We
not the
did,
side setback.
yeah, we're not gonna do any change on that
Right,
Yeah,
amendment,
yep,
Right.
so I took that off this draft
okay,
and
good.
just
right?
kept it, yeah, because it was clear enough in the ordinance, I think that. Yeah. That was obviously.
That was property is like on a corner,
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, corner lots. I know
yeah,
this,
so where the,
in the past, there's been some interesting conversations and discussions about
yeah,
not only setbacks, but addresses.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, exactly.
Which street, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's, yeah.
Great, so we're good with that one.
Yep.
All right, so the next one that we haven't reviewed yet, but we have had some discussions on is the scenario where. In a residential setting, somebody wants to build a garage, but they don't have a house. Or they want to put up a barn, but they don't have a house. So currently, the way the ordinance is written is that if you want to have like a garage or some other. Type of, what we still call accessory structures, you have to have a primary structure, which in a residential setting would be your house. The question was, is it okay to have just a piece of property where you want to put up a shed or a barn or a garage without having to build a house associated with that? So I just started to draft, I just drafted something up for discussion purposes. And what I did in this draft was basically added two different uses to the residential category. One is a garage slash shed, and we could separate them, but I just did it for discussion purposes. And the other one is a barn slash stable. I don't know if who should approve it is correct, but I just wanted to get the conversation going, like, does this start to make sense? Do you still think, does the committee still think that one should be able to put up a garage or a shed or a barn on your property without having to have that be tied to another primary use that's allowed, or like a house?
Yeah.
So that makes these become possible primary uses and not accessory uses.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
No apartment over the garage or whatnot.
That would be a different
Another,
thing.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, different category. That makes perfect sense.
Mhm.
okay. So what about, Kim's going through, maybe, I don't know exactly what to do this, so I just sort of started, I just took a whack at who should approve what. So like in the village residential district, in the residential district, shoreline residential, and the rural woodland district, I had CEO for the barn. And then village commercial, if you're gonna do a barn in a village commercial district, that seems like to me, that seems like either a no or a. Conditional use approval, because just the use of the village commercial is kind of different. Shoreline commercial, probably not. Conservation is a conditional use approval, resource protection, or does RP, resource protection, right? And SP, those are all conditional use approvals, and then the VR3 is basically the SDP, so I just said no.
I think the barn and the stable under DC could be me. Shoreland commercial should be me, although I don't know the shoreland commercial, you typically would have a barn slash stable. I think it'd be similar, just following the accessory structure permitting. I agree that conservation should be a C, resource protection should be a C8.
C8. Is that it?
And C4, just like it is under
Yep.
accessories, and then the same with garage shed.
Hey, Noel,
Yes, Jerry.
Does it change the definition of a barn if they take care of other people's horses for them and charge them for it?
I think that would be something different than just a regular barn, like residential barn. Yep,
Should we
and there
put,
may already be a provision in the ordinance for that.
yeah,
Animal
okay,
animal husbandry.
yeah, well, that's what I was wondering about, whether it became a business if you were
Yeah.
keeping guys' horses for them.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Okay,
it's a good question. Anybody else have a question on this? Does it make sense? We're good with that, okay. So I'm gonna make Kim's changes. We'll go from there. You know. All right, the next one is another administrative change. We're just trying to be more consistent with the shoreline zoning standards and section 6C8. There is a provision under principal and accessory structures that talks about the footprint limitations, and in shoreline zoning, it's actually 20%, and we just hadn't made the change to make it to go from 15 to 20% footprint limitation. We're back. Any questions there? Good? Everybody good with that? All right. This was one we talked about. The next one is one we talked about last time where we need, Kim sent the definitions around for marina and expansion of use as it relates to moorings. So this is basically just to clarify that moorings are actually under the purview of the harbor master, not a planning board review, and an expansion of use is not, when you add moorings, it doesn't constitute an expansion of use. Questions? Okay. Great. And the last one we have tonight, before we get to short-term rental licensing ordinance, is a zone change request. It's actually 2 zone change requests for adjacent properties. And the map is map 3 lot 27 and map 3 lot 26, and they're both in the shoreland residential 2 district. Both properties are actually outside of the 250-foot shoreland zone. And they are requesting to be converted from an SR2 to an R2 zoning district. Questions?
And the other 2 people,
They're within 250.
because
Like
it's
this
further
little
road.
Yeah,
Yeah. If you look at that leg, I had
Yes.
to look at that, yeah,
Yeah.
just that corner there, so they have to be shoreline
Mhm.
residential too.
Even though they have no shoreline.
Yep,
that's cool.
within 250.
That's what I was wondering, I said, there's something special we don't know about this.
That little harbor right there, the creek.
and that's specific just to those 2 properties, correct?
Yeah,
This is Stephanie.
Yeah,
And
right there, yeah.
Katrina.
Yep.
This is that
yeah,
leg.
it was a request, the first person, Everett Pierce Homestead LLC actually requested this back in February last year. It just missed the deadline, so. Yep, if anybody's interested, we have the letter that they sent in.
Letters.
But we're good with that? Everybody here good with that?
Yes.
Great. All right, so these are the ones that are gonna be, with no minor, only the one minor tweak to the uses, CEO or just use, in matrix for the uses, barns and garages, those are gonna be available. And I think we have public hearings scheduled with the planning board in, February, so we'll talk about those, and those will be all, these are all going for town meeting. Good,
Mhm.
all right. Next. So I forwarded around, now we're back to short-term rentals, the short-term rental licensing ordinance.
So there's no confusion. I'll recuse myself from any valued discussion on this issue since we happen to own a rental LLC business. And so
Can you
no one
discuss
will
what you-
have any questions regarding, if I'm asked a specific question, I'd be happy to answer it. Other than that,
Can you contribute to the conversation but not vote?
well, one would think so, but to make sure that there is no fogginess in the issue, I'll recuse myself from any discussion on the issue.
So I do short-term rentals and I own a vacation rental. And I have questions about this, but I guess I have to recuse myself as well, so. I mean, it's too bad.
Yeah, but aren't we an advisory board?
This is a,
Not
this is a
making voting.
discussion group. There's no voting going on and no decisions being made.
Well, the issue has been raised.
I understand that, but in this case, we're not voting or adopting anything except just sending it to some future to be voted on. And we're not voting to approve or disapprove anything. So I don't see why you can't express your opinion. That's the whole point of this board, this group.
If everyone agrees, then
I
I would,
agree.
I would just assume
We're clearly
participate.
advisory, so,
Right.
Well, that's always been my opinion,
yeah.
but in deference to those who saw it otherwise.
No, I understand that, but I disagree with that view. I think we're a discussion board more than a setting a principal board or voting
I mean,
on.
if that being said, if you recuse yourself, Dave's got to recuse himself.
Well,
Katrina.
And the example that I gave in terms of our participation in this is that would that not also preclude anyone who owns land from sitting on the planning board?
Yeah,
Right.
Good point.
So,
Well, yeah.
but anyway,
I would say if everybody agrees with me, for the purposes of this discussion, why not let you talk? As long as you don't talk too much.
you know me, Jerry, I'm always talking too much.
I'll tell you when you've gone over the limit.
I think it would be very unfortunate not to have the experience that Katrina and I and Rick have gained over a long period of time.
Well, and we also invited virtually anyone in the community who had any interest in short-term rentals to please come to this advisory board and offer their opinions in the assistance of shaping what might potentially be a recommendation before the townspeople to vote on.
I'm at,
I agree.
everybody's, I'm
Yeah,
at,
I mean,
Then I'm in.
yeah, I would say. So.
all right. Well, that being said, I prepared an updated discussion draft of the short-term rental licensing ordinance, just to reflect back. We've been asked to try to come up with some process for the town to consider related to short-term rentals. And we started off the conversation early, several months ago, or even longer ago, trying to figure out how to do this. And the directive was, let's start to look at a licensing ordinance, which is fairly basic and allows the town to collect mainly licenses, so that we can start to understand where and how and if short-term rentals are starting to become more out of balance with other things, land use related. And so that's really the principle behind what we've been doing. And we're trying to seek a sort of a balanced approach and solicit input from everybody, and that's what I've tried to do in this draft. Although I will say there was a lot of discussion last time we had this up. And there are probably some things in here that I didn't capture accurately, so that's part of the reason why we keep going through these. And I would think before we get to present something to the Board of Selectmen for consideration to put on a warrant, we do have some public hearings in February schedule where, again, we're going to be talking about it. So just to make sure everybody has a chance to provide some input. Anyway, so what I thought I would do today, in the time we have remaining, is basically just sort of what I've done for people who haven't seen the things that I like to produce. The underlines are new things, the strike throughs are old things that we are proposing to delete. And what I've tried to do is highlight in yellow everything that we're gonna be talking about. There's probably a few yellow highlights that I missed, but that's just to help everybody kind of understand. And then what you'll be seeing when we get to the final draft, everything will just be underlined because it's all new language. But we'll take out all that. So just so everybody's clear, and that's how this is organized. All right. So first things first.
Excuse me, is this, my name is Mitch Colkin, I'm a summer resident. Is this available for people to see? Whatever you're looking at?
I don't have the ability today to actually put it up on the screen.
Is it something that's been sent around?
I'm not sure. It's sent around to the committee. It's definitely available for people to look at. Yep.
And how
And we
can
have-
I get it? How can
We
I get
actually-
it?
If you want, I can email it to you, but not right this second. Yeah, so Kim can email it to you right now if you tell her what your email address is.
Well, I was wondering, maybe you should just post it on the town website or something.
Definitely gonna post it on the town website after this meeting.
Oh, okay, that's all I need.
Okay,
Because it's
Can
currently.
Can I ask a question about your draft and your proposal?
sure.
Or is this, or I don't want to take you out of order, but if you want to explain it first, I can ask my
Well, I
question
think
later.
what we've done is basically, I'd like to just we have about 30 minutes left before we have to leave. So what I'd like to do is kind of walk through what changes I've made. And then if you have specific questions, you can ask as we do that. And then I would also point out that we have other opportunities to weigh in. So this is like, I'm just trying to get this to a draft that we are gonna have for public meeting format. That makes sense? Does that work for everybody?
No, can Kim send me a copy of it too? Because I haven't seen this at all. And I'd like to see it. It's hard to follow you when we're not looking at what you're actually reading from.
Got it. Do you have Tracy's email?
Yeah, do you want it right now, Tracy?
Yeah, if you could, Kim, just because then when you're starting to talk, I can at least follow it.
I'll do it.
She's on her way.
You might as well,
Thank you.
you might as well send it to me then too, mcolkin@venable.com.
What's it? What is it?
MKOLKIN at Venable, V as in Victor, ENABLE.com.
Right? Doesn't,
You want me to take that down again?
sure.
I don't mind, I'm on
Okay.
it.
Okay. So the first thing is an edit from the purpose statement that we did last time, and I just added some additional language to help clarify what the ordinance is intended to do. Both to recognize that some property owners desire to to rent their legally owned units as short-term rentals. And at the same time, there are legitimate concerns about the proliferation of short-term rentals, and this ordinance is intended to help try to balance those out.
Can I'm sorry I wasn't here the last time, but I wasn't able to be here, but I have two words I'd like to change or eliminate from this paragraph. Is this the time to talk about that?
Yeah,
So, the fourth line from the bottom where it said short-term rentals can generate. I think the word should be could, because they could, they don't have to. But can says they're definitely going to. Where you're talking about the negative impacts of the short-term rentals. And if you had said the word could, it means maybe they will, maybe they won't. But can says definitely they will. So I'm asking can to become could.
so what you're suggesting is at the same time, there are legitimate concerns about the proliferation of.
Oh, I'm asking for the word proliferation to be eliminated.
There are legitimate concerns about the proliferation of short-term rentals and the unique impacts they could have. Is that the one? Is that the
No.
can? Okay.
Fourth line from the bottom.
Fourth line from the bottom. It starts with while minimizing
Okay,
the
got it.
negative impacts of said short-term
Rentals
Could.
could generate.
rather than can. It's a little bit softer.
Yep,
And then the next line down where it says enables the town to monitor and track these short-term rentals. We don't need to say proliferation. We just need to say we're tracking the short-term rentals.
Got it.
Mhm.
Thoughts on that from the committee?
Well, I guess the word proliferation presupposes that it definitely will spread. It may actually diminish. Who knows?
So we're just tracking.
So we're tracking the short-term rentals to get an idea of which way it's going and what it's doing.
Yep.
And I do agree with the addition of could as opposed to can. Because that presupposes, as was stated, that would, I mean, can says, yes, it's definitely going to happen,
Right.
and we don't know that.
Yep. Okay,
Thank you.
and I'm, just because Dave's on, and I'm not gonna get a chance to share the screen, Dave, you want me to just read what you sent for comments, or do you want to talk about it?
No, you can read what I asked to be added to this paragraph.
All right. So Dave's recommendation is to add the following after the first sentence. The town of Mount Desert also recognizes that the ability for some property owners to rent their residential dwelling unit and or their accessory dwelling unit as a short-term rental has contributed to their ability to remain as a year-round resident of the town of Mount Desert.
It's important.
The fact,
Yeah, that's true.
Okay,
So can we add that?
it's up to you.
Yes.
And by you, I mean the greater you, not the me.
The you here says
Is
yes.
this
Yeah.
like, so this is replacing this?
Nope,
No.
we're adding it
Okay.
after the first sentence.
Okay.
Jerry, you good with that?
Could you reread it one more time?
Love to. The town of Mount Desert also recognizes that the ability for some property owners to rent their residential dwelling unit and or their accessory dwelling unit as a short-term rental has contributed to their ability to remain as a year-round resident of the town of Mount Desert.
I'm fine with that.
Great. Will do. Add Dave. Okay, so performance standard, for purpose statement, any other questions? Any questions from the audience? Hearing none. All right, so under applicability, we can talk about applicability holistically, but first I just want to point out one of the things that I changed was trying to simplify this whole idea of what we were originally calling an owner occupied residential rental accommodation. There's a lot of words there. And I just changed it to, and I wanted to see how people feel about calling it just a hosted home stay. And that is exempt, and we can get to the definition of that, but essentially it's the same thing. So if you live there and you're renting out a room, it's exempt from this ordinance.
yeah, makes perfect sense.
I'm just calling it a hosted home stay as opposed to this other term, which seems a little easier.
Is a hosted homestay, I live in my garage apartment and they live in my house. Is that
It is a residential dwelling unit that is the owner's residence is occupied, including overnight, by such owners during the short-term rental period. In the case of a one-family residential dwelling with a legally permitted accessory residential dwelling unit, the owner shall reside in either unit during the short-term rental period. There is no minimum stay required for hosted homestay short-term rentals.
so either way?
Yes,
Thank you.
but it's a house and a garage apartment, like an accessory dwelling unit, not like multiple dwelling units. That's important. Yes,
Okay.
please.
I was just wondering if you have a limit, because I know earlier meetings we talked about like 2 bedrooms being a max.
So that we're gonna talk about later, because I haven't adjusted that. I wasn't clear what the conclusion was, so I'm completely happy to talk about it, but we'll definitely get to that. Yes.
And I think maybe I'm having a hard time with the statements of what each one is, but what if you have a home with like a guest house that doesn't have like a means of cooking or something, but you want to rent that out, but perhaps it's not a legal residential dwelling unit per the definition of the town. Where does that
Hmm.
fall? Because I'm not really seeing that fall on either place.
It's a good question.
Tim's looking.
So you're talking about the term guest house in the ordinance.
Yeah, so maybe you have,
Well, a guest house says a structure to house only family members or guests, which shall not become a dwelling unit as defined in the ordinance. So it doesn't sound like it can be rented.
Today,
so. How is that different from saying that it's like a room from like, rooms from that like are in your home? Like, can you rent rooms in your home? Like you can on Airbnb, you want to list.
Then
rooms?
that becomes a B and B, right?
Well, or you
There's a
can rent on
definition.
VRBO, you can rent rooms from your home.
Yep,
So I guess that sort of language is what didn't see in this.
yep,
Um,
that's a good question. Happy to sort of figure that out. I think some of it is terminology too, that there's certain terminologies in the ordinance that we just need to think through a little bit more. The thing that I would want to look into a little bit more is like the current definition of guest house was actually, other people can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was created for the purpose of allowing people to build these guest houses that aren't dwelling units.
For
For family members.
Extended
So-
family.
Technically, it's a really good question about whether or not they should even be rented as short-term rentals. Today, I'm not making a judgment on it, I'm just saying,
I just think that when we talk about, again, going back to that sustainability of people who live here year round, who want to be able to afford to live here year round, or
Mhm.
send their children to college, utilizing something like that to be able to do short-term rentals, I think is really, really beneficial and something we should, I
Yeah.
think several people might fall under.
sure, no, I'm not, and again, I'm not arguing, I'm not saying it's not
No,
a good
I'm just
idea,
like-
I'm just,
Yeah.
Trying to figure it out. I think that's a great question to look into, yeah. Also, let me just preface tonight's conversation by saying, like, if I'm like speeding things along, it's because I really want to try to get comments on the whole ordinance, and I really do want to have conversations about this, which is why we have other meetings in February lined up. But we only have like, I'm not rushing you, I'm just saying if I start to say, hey, let me look into that and not have a lengthy discussion about it, it's not because I didn't get through the whole thing.
The guest house I added to our question.
Got it? What
So-
about guest house? Yes, Jerry.
Any ordinance we end up writing up to give to the town, we're gonna have requirements for what constitutes a short-term rental unit, correct?
Yep, there is a definition for short-term rental in this ordinance. But what this conversation is more about currently.
Yeah.
If you're using your existing guest house as a short-term rental, are you even supposed to do that? Maybe you could short-term rental to a family member. Anyway, I'm not trying to,
I don't
I don't want to
have.
belabor it. Yeah, what? I think it's a good question then. It's a really good, interesting question to try to figure out.
Yep.
All
I
right,
know the ordinance used to say guest house are not to be rented,
yeah.
used to say it,
Mhm.
then we took it out.
Right. Yeah. I will put that on our list for conversation too. So anything else under applicability? All right. Then there's a section in all the ordinances called validity and severability. That's basically what says, if anything here is invalidated by any specific section is invalidated, then other sections still apply. Under definitions, I added the hosted homestay definition and deleted the owner occupied residential rental accommodation. So we're going to, I'm just adding to my question list, the whole idea of guest houses. I just added the term residential dwelling unit because that's what's the term in the actual land use ordinance. It's not just dwelling unit. Dave, I skipped over your validity and severability question. You want me to read that?
Oh, yeah, that's really hugely important.
Short-term rental licenses issued under this ordinance shall be transferable. I think that's a transfer question, so I do want to touch on that because we totally eliminated that one. So I'm gonna hold the transferability thing for a second, Dave, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Great. If I skip over some, please holler. So under the term short-term rental, this is one of the questions I had. I wasn't quite sure how things ended up at the last meeting, because it was really hard to facilitate on Zoom, but, I made a few tweaks, as we can see, including adding the term in whole or in part. So the use, control, management, or operation of a legally existing dwelling unit offered in whole or in part for rent, for transient occupancy, for dwelling, sleeping, or lodging purposes for fewer than 30 consecutive days. And I highlighted 30 consecutive days because I think there was some discussion about whether or not we should have it be less than 30 consecutive.
Well, because the state of Maine says, for tax purposes, short-term rentals in the state of Maine are defined as reservations of fewer than 28 consecutive days.
Okay,
So can we change 30 to 28?
sure. I will just say every definition of short-term rental I've looked at so far has 30 days, and that's why.
Right, but I went to the state of Maine website.
Yep.
And asked that one. That's how I came up with that.
Okay,
And that
May I
was
ask
part
a-
of the.
May I ask a
Sales
question
tax.
about the definition?
sure.
Is there a minimum period of time?
No,
So it could be a weekend?
could be. So far, I think we started off thinking about 7-day minimum, and then we took that out. That was recommended to be taken out. So no, there is no minimum. Jerry, did you have a question? No, okay.
And then further on in your sentence about the 30 consecutive days, it talks about excluding motels, hotels, bed, breakfast, inns, and residential
Oh, yeah.
rental.
Sorry, yep, gotta take that out.
Okay,
Should say hosted homestay. I think.
okay, thank you. And I know we talked about nights, because what's a day? If you move in at 4 PM and you leave at 10 AM, is that 2 days the following day? Or is that 1 day? So I like having this say,
Generally bed nights.
yeah, I like having it say nights rather than days. Even though the state of Maine said days.
Any thoughts on that from other people?
When you rent a room, if they get in at 10 in the morning. And then they leave on a Friday and they leave Sunday. At 9, do they pay for 3 days or 2 days?
You pay for 2 nights.
So it would be a 2-night stay.
Correct.
Okay, so you're not adding an extra day of making them pay for it by them being there, then that's fine.
We're not making anybody pay for anything except a license.
Well, I know that, but I was talking in terms of people that might rent places.
I don't know.
You've been very good about not talking too much, Rick. I'm impressed.
Thank you, Jerry.
So you're going from 30
Wait,
consecutive days
Yeah.
to nights?
so just to summarize,
28 nights.
yeah, the suggested edit from the committee is 28 consecutive nights. Good?
Right.
Okay,
And it would also go in the next part too, is what is a short-term rental guest? It's someone that's there for less than 28 consecutive nights.
and then the next definition down, just to make it consistent, yes, would be making it 28 consecutive nights.
I would wish it were less than 28, but I know that's what the state of Maine says.
Yeah. Okay. Good with definitions? Okay. Now, again, just trying to simplify things a little bit. I just took out the term.
Days.
Oh, yeah, Dave.
Dave said 14.
Dave, you said 14, not 30. Are you good with 28?
I still prefer the 14, but I guess I'm in the minority.
Dave, I would much prefer 14, but seeing how the state of Maine goes with 28, and it's part of the whole sales tax issue, that's why I
What
said
it's all about.
28.
Okay. All right, now there's some, this is the requirements section, so basically this is a license, everybody has, all short-term rentals have to get a license, you can't advertise until you, have one. The first major change from all the other drafts, I don't know if this is a major change, but the edit, is under the registration procedure. I may have reorganized this a little bit too, so that's why it looks slightly different. So applicant shall provide all information requested on the short-term rental registration application form, including but not limited to the following information: the owner and property information, number of tenants allowed, emergency contact information. Pretty simple. The proposed short-term rental may only be registered by the legal owner of the proposed short-term rental unit or an authorized representative. I think there was some conversation about, well, can my agent do it around? And I think it's a similar process to getting a permit, where if you have a letter of authorization, I could fill out an application for somebody. Non-refundable fees. For short-term rental registration / renewal shall be as adopted by the Board of Selectmen. And may be amended from time to time. Such fees must be submitted at the time of registration, essentially, or renewal. So we don't like to put actual numbers in ordinances, because then the board gets a chance to review it every year and make a decision about whether the fees are appropriate. Registration number will be given. Just wanted to make sure that's, because that's part of how you track it. Each dwelling unit has to have if you have multiple dwelling units, each one gets its own registration number. The Board of Selectmen shall establish fees for licensure of short-term rentals, so that might be a little redundant. Any questions on that?
Who is, I don't want to say babysitting, but who is making sure all this gets done, Ken? Like, who's gonna make sure there's something visible in a window
Yeah.
or whatnot? Or who's gonna go on Verbo and say, oh, they didn't register, it's just a
Yep.
fake,
At this point,
okay.
under transferability, trying to
Noel?
simplify. it.
Noel?
Yes, Yeah.
I'm having a little trouble hearing you, but are you done with registration procedure?
not yet. I was gonna move to right down to transferability so that we can talk about your comment up above, and then we can get back to that. Or do you want to, maybe we can talk about it right now?
It doesn't matter. I like I said, I was just having trouble following.
So let's talk about it right now, Dave. Under registration procedure, Dave's suggestion is to eliminate, I think it's under B2, right?
Yes,
Eliminate the part of the sentence that says including but not limited to. And just add owner contact information.
I have owners that don't want to be contacted come hell or high water,
And
So
you
you'd
have
be their
LLCs,
agent?
you have LLCs too.
and LLCs that are run by a lawyer.
So, and
So it would be very difficult if that were the requirement, because I would get no response.
Dave, you mean Dave's requirement?
Yeah,
So I think the
Agent.
reason I would like to keep including but not limited to is that as you get into the licensing, if there are some statistical things that you want to get from this license in order to track things better, you could add more information to the application form. These are just the basic things that go into that. Okay. So I'd like to keep the limited, including but not limited to part, just gives you a little flexibility.
and the reason why I would like to see it out is the items required for registration should be approved at town meeting. I don't think that, this would be approved at town meeting and under these items that we're talking about, but the way I look at that, the way it's worded, anything else can be added, anything, without going to town meeting.
Does,
eliminate and include it.
that's the but limited, not limited to part that Dave's worried about, I think. Right, Dave? It's that, but not limited to part you're worried about.
We'll just put in a sentence that says any changes proposed will be added in at the next town meeting.
Isn't that a given?
I would think so, but Any changes that you make to the LUZO, you have to do a town meeting. So if we change this and add something on later, it's gonna go to town meeting because we have to vote on the changes. But if you take out included but not limited to, that sets it kind of in stone. That's my opinion.
I just need some direction.
I agree with Jerry. It's gonna have to go before town meeting anyway, if it's an approved ordinance by the voters. And you wanna make a change to that ordinance, you're gonna have to bring it before the voters.
Right, it's not the ordinance that you're talking about here, it's the registration form. That does not get approved by town meeting. Dave's right.
But the language for that form and its existence, the reason that it exists is because it's in the ordinance.
Well, if you say including but not limited to, then we could add stuff to the registration form.
If it's something that is outside of the ordinance itself and can be altered at a whim, then I agree with Dave.
It's not a regulatory form, it's just the application form. Which you wouldn't approve at a town meeting.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah.
Okay. But to get to Katrina's point. Keep the owner and property, maybe we add owner / representative and property information, something like that. Got it.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine, but how did we end up on included but not limited to?
I think
pretty
we all
common.
agreed with you.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
we took it out. The recommendation is to take it out.
Thank you.
Yep. Next one, under C, the inspection comment Dave had, adding to the end of the paragraph. However, said inspection shall not be required as a condition of the license issuance.
Where is it? In section C?
See, the very last, at the very end, just add a sentence that says. However, said inspection shall not be required as a condition of license issuance.
They'd be inspected after the license was issued.
Well, the code enforcement officer may do it. It doesn't mean that they will do it. It's just an option. And then Dave's point is, it doesn't. If the code officer doesn't do it, you can still get a license. Good,
When do we talk about transferability?
right now.
Okay, so if number 3 says a proposed short-term rental may only be registered by the legal owner of the proposed short-term unit or authorized representative, then it might make sense to say that short-term rental licenses issued can be, Dave's part, shall be transferable to a new owner as of the day the new owner acquires possession of the property and shall expire on December 31. A new license shall be required the following year. Because I would hate to sell you my vacation rental loaded up with leases on May 30th and have you not be able to get a license for the coming summer.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the whole point is actually, though, that if I bought your short-term rental. I need to go and get a license for myself and not have you give me that license. And what Dave is suggesting is, if it's already a licensed short-term rental and I buy it, that license is good until the end of the
Yes.
year.
Yeah,
Yes,
So that's just a policy change, just to be clear.
I
I
agree.
think, I agree with
Yeah,
Dave.
because what if it was all rented up and?
Yep, okay. I mean, you could still go get a license.
Where's that
Yeah.
going?
Under E, transferability.
Under
So,
C,
E, transferability,
E1,
E1.
oh, E1, okay, I'm sorry.
So that's gonna replace,
just taking out the not.
Hmm. I think you have to add that it has to be renewed at the end of the licensing period.
I think you're gonna use Dave's whole
Yeah.
sentence.
I'm just gonna, I think that what I would do is.
I don't have Dave's whole sentence.
Delete one and add Dave's whole sentence, so with Dave's edit. Okay, good, all right, just being mindful of time, it's 5:50.
They don't start till 6:30.
I thought it was at 6.
Hey, Dave,
I'm not stressed out.
will you send me your edits next time you make them?
Sure.
Thank you. You got me at a loss here. I have no idea what you said.
Right, that's good. Next is under standards. So I basically took review process, and you can see in the ordinance, but I took out review process and added it to above. So I'm just trying to like streamline the section a little bit. Under standards, all the way down to one thing that Kim and I were just discussing today is that there is actually a state law about gas monitoring. If you have a facility, if you have a house that uses like a gas stove or some other combustible gas appliance or something, so that's is already a requirement. I could add that in here too, but for these standards, the other thing that I did was under portable fire extinguishers, rather than like try to get into the whole specificity of that, I just had an appropriately sized portable fire extinguisher, and I think that was some comments from last time, just to try to ratchet back a little bit.
Can we ask them to have a street number?
Sure. So under standards, add street number.
That whatever it is, it meets the standards of the community.
Yeah, needs an E911 address.
Yeah. Well, and so many houses don't have visible street numbers,
Yes.
That's an ordinance. Yeah.
but it needs to be in here. If you're gonna rent your house, have a street number.
Yeah, we can do that. Under the sanitary waste disposal one, I think Dave has some comments here too, but what I did was, again, so this is just like the policy choice that the town has to make. If you can demonstrate you have sewer, that's great, but if places have main subsurface wastewater disposal, they have to make the subsurface disposal rules. And this is kind of like making sure that you don't overburden the septic system, because there's some environmental implications there, not just homeowner expense implications. That's the main purpose.
Can we? So I got a copy of Dave's edits.
Yep.
But we have enough systems in this community that were dug by a dead man after dark, because nobody knows much about them. So how do you make sure that you are adequate with your bedrooms and the number of people? How do you do that?
I think you just have to have an approved septic system or something in the file.
Plan.
Yep.
I think that's a pretty big burden on people that are trying to rent their house so they can afford to live here and send their kids to college.
So then how do we know if the septic system is overburdened and failing?
Oh, it will surface.
Literally.
Yeah, it will, yeah, something will
Yeah.
happen.
But still, I mean, I'm not sure that the rural wastewater guidelines really talk about the turnover of people renting their properties and the, you know, the number of people. Like it's designed for 3 bedrooms, but it's only typically designed by bedrooms, and it's either a single family dwelling, multiple dwelling. It doesn't really state that it's got to do with rental and turnover of how often a house is rented.
So what's your,
I don't know.
okay,
Well, if you're limiting how much people can rent, how much space people can rent, you can't put 14 people in a house with 1 bathroom.
I'm sure people do it.
I understand that, but the number of bathrooms to the number of tenants they're proposing could cover that. And yes,
Yeah.
people are gonna overuse it.
Right. Bathrooms don't count on a septic design. It's by bedrooms.
Just bedrooms?
Yeah, you could have 100 bathrooms and it doesn't matter. It's by bedrooms. In a single family dwelling or multi-family. dwelling.
Yeah, so my feeling is that if I had 20 people for Christmas, all using the bathroom, that could overload it. Well, I'm on sewer, but that could overload it for a while, but it's generally not going to do it. And the people aren't going to rent their house. Having their septic overflow is going to cost them money. that they're making renting their house, so that if it's in their interest not to overload their own septic systems.
My point was, if there's an existing system that there's no documented information on, and it's a 3-bedroom house, and it's been functioning properly for 25 years, are we gonna require that they put in a new system, or investigate what's there to prove what's there? My feeling is that if it's a 3-bedroom house and it's existing, then we should let them have a permit. If the system fails, there are all kinds of rules in place of how to handle if the system should fail.
If it's a 3-bedroom house, how many people do you permit it for rental?
It's in the ordinance, as we have it right now, it's 6 + 2, which is 8.
Yeah, so it is a little redundant, I suppose, in that sense. There's already a provision, Jerry, in the ordinance that starts to talk about occupancy.
Yeah, well, that's what I was.
Yep.
I mean, what are we gonna say to somebody that cannot document what their system is, but it hasn't malfunctioned, and they tell us that they have they've had more than 10 people living in the house for years? Are we gonna tell them they gotta dig up their system? And it just seems,
Well, I think I was kind of agreeing with you.
yeah, no, I
Isn't
wasn't.
I agree too. I feel like this is getting really in the weeds. It almost feels like an invasion of privacy at a certain point. I mean, you're requiring homeowners to turn over every detail of their homes. And many of us, I mean, I have a farmhouse from 1910, and I literally think that my well was dug with a spoon, but I don't know. And then you guys are gonna come in and tell me you can't rent your house until you have every single thing inspected by the town. And poor Kim, is she supposed to be doing all of these inspections for everybody who's renting their houses? This feels huge, what you guys are trying to contain in this thing, and the implications to all of us homeowners also feels huge to me. And also, just a quick question: has this ship sailed? Whether we do this or not? Have we voted whether we want this in this town? Because it feels to me like there would be a lot of people who would say, I don't want you messing with my private home. I pay my taxes. I live within the rules of the town. And I'd really rather not have.
All of this will come up at town meeting when we vote on it.
Okay,
Tracy,
but I'm asking the question, have we voted? Has that ship
No.
sailed? So the answer is no.
No, it's coming up. That's what we're working on now, is something to vote on at the next town meeting.
Well, this
Tracy.
is a lot to vote on. This isn't just one question. This is, do we want this? And then, oh, by the way, if you want this, do you want this particular document? That's what
Tracy,
you're
this
asking.
was brought to us by the Board of Selectmen. That's how we got here. It
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
this coming out of nowhere. Okay, I just wanted to not think that we did this, or, yeah.
No. I understand it's coming from somewhere, but it feels pretty big. And I don't even feel like we've had a single vote to say, do we even want you making this sheet of paper?
Thanks, Tracy.
Yep.
First of all, it was, as the liaison from the Board of Selectmen, it was referred to this board by the Board of Selectmen because the issue was brought to the board, and where there was nothing regulating any rentals and the questions were being asked by the citizenry, we decided that probably it would be good to have the advisory board, the LUZO advisory board, take a look at it and see what the possibilities are and begin to gather data and offer something to the town to vote on. So basically, we're painting with a very broad brush here to bring something before the voters so that they may decide whether and to what extent they want to have any of this in our town. As far as the septic issue is concerned and regulations and all that, in applicability under A, it states that permitted short-term rentals, legally existing residential dwelling units, they don't become a legally existing residential dwelling unit without having established a suitable septic system or attachment to sewer. So the issue to me has already been dealt with under the applicability clause.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely take this out. Again, just to
Yes.
keep in mind, everything here is, let's come up with a model, let's see what makes sense, and we can remove things or put things
Right.
back in. It's really a draft.
Because we can debate on how old a person's septic tank is until the cows come home.
Yeah, and again, as I tried to explain, the reason why this kind of thing is in an ordinance is because there are some environmental concerns
Right.
related to septic subsurface wastewater disposal, and if you're overburdening it, you're not just overburdening your own problem, it's creating a problem for other people.
Mhm.
And my well
Yeah.
next door, for example, so that's why they're in there.
Mhm.
Not to argue about whether or not my system works or doesn't work.
I was
or my-
wondering who lived next door.
Yeah, my giant metal, rotting metal container of the septic system is
Yeah.
actually working, whatever, which are legal, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Anyway, that's why it's,
So you add on.
so I'm just to throw that out there.
Mhm.
It's not willy-nilly in there for no reason at all.
Mhm.
So I would
I get it.
suggest that we remove E.
Great. Everybody on board with that?
Excuse me, I've got a question about H, if it's not too late. Are there good neighbor guidelines?
Nope, that's an old draft. We eliminated that. That's out.
Oh, we did?
Yep.
H?
H is still in, but
Oh,
good neighbor guidelines are not in. And that's an older draft.
Oh.
I'm gonna move on to F, then we can get to H, which in my draft is occupancy limits, which I think something people want to talk about too. So I also wanted to kind of talk about parking, and again, this is one of those things where we've heard some concerns about parking, we've heard some concerns that there are no concerns about parking. So I tried to simplify it a little bit, but there's probably some language we can modify here, but just wanted to, what I did was I took out the guest parking at short-term rentals shall occur only in parking spaces designated by the applicant. But really just to say tenants and guests of short-term rentals are prohibited from parking in a manner that impedes access to emergency vehicles to the property or any other place. So this is, the provision here is really intended to help. Like if you have 14 people coming and there's only space for 5 cars, you don't get 14 cars, because that's gonna create problems for
Right.
not just you, but for the rest of the
Neighborhood.
community.
Mhm.
So that's the point of this section.
Is G necessary? Because we
Oh,
have,
wait, are we done with F?
Mhm. I think so.
Okay, we're good with F. Dave, I don't see any comments on F, so I'm moving on. G, I mean, is G necessary? I would say yes, but
we have town pickup for trash. It's automatic. They come to your house like magicians every week, twice in the
I
summer.
know. it's
They take it
amazing.
away, so. I don't see any, I mean. If they're magically coming anyway, do we need to,
I don't know.
Make sure it gets put out.
Yeah,
I
I don't, what's the harm in keeping it? If somebody just doesn't take the trash out for 2 weeks,
Mm.
is there?
I want them to take it out.
Yeah. but this is for the owner, not for the tenant.
Yeah, but I think that the owner has to make sure that.
The owner has a
tenant takes the trash out.
responsibility to make
Okay.
sure that the home stays healthful. And they're not hoarding garbage.
That's.
You never know.
Either way, I'm okay with it either way. I'm just throwing it out there.
All right,
I've seen homes that have hoarded
All right.
garbage.
H is parking, I mean, H is occupancy limits, and then this one is pretty similar to what we had before. And I'm not sure what the conclusion was after the last meeting, but essentially it's what the way Dave described it. 2 tenants per bedroom plus 2 additional tenants. It's just a way to make sure things don't get overlooked. Any comments?
I've actually heard from constituents who were concerned that if so-and-so wants to start renting their house, what's to prevent them from having 14 or 15 people come and stay in it and disrupt my life for a week?
Nothing right now. Okay. Great. Suspension and revocation of license, that is basically all the stuff. I don't think I made any changes to that. That's pretty consistent from the last time.
so I have a question about 3.
Yes,
Failure to acquire and to display the required short-term license number. Or include the license number in any advertising of the licensed premises.
yep.
Do you really need the number out there on every? isn't it more important that the license be displayed in the property than to make sure that the license number is out there everywhere?
A part of that is to be able to make sure that you're actually, if you're advertising for a short-term rental, and you need to try to, if there's some monitoring of that, and there's an actual way to correlate, hey, there's a license, there's a license, that's the reason it's there.
So if there's no license, then you would know that it hadn't been registered?
If there's no, if it's being advertised without a license number, then you can check to make sure that it is
Okay.
actually registered.
So I look at that with my rental hat on thinking, oh my God, one more thing to add and one more thing for me to transpose or screw up.
Mhm.
So,
I have to put my license number in every ad I ever run.
okay.
It's gotta be on every single piece of paper I submit.
Okay, we have one question in the audience.
So those of us that use like Airbnb or VRBO, I can see, you know, would we add that to our listing? But the question I have is that if you're exempt from meeting this, that means that when people scroll through our town, they want to be in a home that's probably compliant. So if half the people or 3/4 have this license number, but say I'm exempt and I don't have it, you know, does that raise suspicion? Oh, has she not? It's going to be an illegal listing. So it seems like, you know, Airbnb, you know, is the only place majority of us, or VRBO is majority where we're gonna advertise. So I don't know how we be compliant with that.
Yeah, let me think about that one a little bit. The only things that aren't, so it's the individual rooms or houses, the owner occupied homes that are exempt, so. Yeah, let's think about that one. That's the reason why it's in there though. to be
I
able
also
to
don't
track.
want somebody to come to me and say, oh, you know, you don't have a license, and that open us up to some level of suspicion from neighbors or whomever,
Mhm,
if we are assessed.
good point. Thoughts?
She raises a good point, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
okay,
maybe what you could do is for the owner exempt, even though I don't support any of this, but if you could issue a license that actually has a number. Even, but it's an exempt number. So then it appears that you have the correct license, even though you're an exempt house.
They don't need to get a license if they're exempt.
Right,
Oh, you don't even need to have a license at all. So then you would just have like an EX number or something, an exempt
Yep.
number. I don't know.
yep, it's a good question, yes.
But are you going to require the homeowners to put a business license on Airbnb? I mean, there's, you know, it's not something Airbnb is asking. So if the town's asking for it, you know, why should we put that on Airbnb?
Right, if it's what the ordinance is saying is if you're advertising on Airbnb or VRBO or in the Islander, I was gonna say the Harbor Times, but that's all. Is to put your license number on that, somewhere in that ad. And there's the reason behind that is, again, just to make sure there's a correlation between what you're advertising and the fact that you do have a license.
That's not really advertising, that's booking.
Yep.
Booking.
Yeah, I'm happy with it. I think it's a great question. Good point. Yeah. Yeah, once again, I feel like I'm in this position where I'm defending all these things.
No,
when really
no.
it's me who will be- work through all this stuff. Any other questions on suspension or revocation?
we haven't decided what to do about those people that are exempt.
We have yet to determine what to do about that.
Right. Take some pondering.
Yes,
So in the meantime, we could just get rid of this whole putting the license in the advertising until we figure out what to do with them.
I think it's the opposite of what we should do, but.
I would tend to agree with you on that one, Noel. Good try, Katrina.
Good job. I know, I like the effort.
I'm just thinking, I mean, I know how many rentals I have, and if I have to put licenses on every one of them. Because it will be the inputting the first time around, it will be painful.
Right, the first time around.
I put it that way.
Okay. Let's see, the next section is violations, penalties and enforcement, and Dave, his comment was eliminate. I think that the section here is really because you have to have some follow-up. There's no if there's a violation of the ordinance, and it's pretty standard stuff, but I leave it up to you guys.
It seems like,
Something.
when I put that together, I was running out of time, so that's why I eliminate the whole thing. However, it seems, I think it all should go right into suspension. It just seems like a duplication. I mean, in one case, it says the selectmen have the authority, and then in this case, it's saying the town has the authority, but who in the town has the authority?
Yeah,
I don't think it's clear.
yeah, so I sent this part to Andy Hamilton already, and I'm waiting for comments back from them. So that'll help.
The problem with this is, if the guests violate this, it's, the owner gets penalized for, so. How do you, I mean, so you're my guest and you had a wild party and you had 47 cars in the driveway.
Mhm.
So I lose my license and you're my first guest in July
Yep,
and I'm out of luck for the rest of the summer.
well, it doesn't mean you're gonna lose your license. I think what the process is, and I can't find the specific section, is there, like, if you have a wild party, if somebody has a wild party at your Airbnb and I call the town and make a complaint,
Right,
then there's a list of complaints.
right.
And so then at a certain point, the code officer can decide, hey, this is going on too far, we need to bring this to the board of selectmen. They get to decide whether or not you lose your license. It's not like an automatic lose your license.
But with no noise ordinance in this community,
Yep. But that's the board of selectmen's job to decide whether or not it's a valid, you
okay,
know, the evidence is that this has become a party house. And we don't
Or
want
just
to
like
show
they
this
can review
as an example.
or whoever.
so it's actually gonna be a delayed enforcement anyway, because
Yep,
to get on the agenda to get heard, it's gonna be 2 weeks after the bad people leave anyway.
correct. But if it's, I think if it's more,
Maybe people
Well, I mean,
settle
it
down.
is reality, right?
I think if it's more
Yeah.
consistent,
Yeah.
then, but I.
So if I advertise as the party house in the village, that would probably get me in more trouble than just having.
You might want to be a little more subtle.
You
Yeah,
might.
But I would have a license number, so it'd be
I was
okay.
gonna say, don't put your license number
Yeah,
on
don't
that
put
one.
your lesbian.
All right, well, I think this is all where we are. I will say for everybody who's like taking the great time to look over this, I think we can post this version
For the
online.
changes.
I'm gonna make a few changes. There may be some questions like the one about the license number that we can't deal with right away. But if I make a few changes, I'll have the town post this version online in preparation for meetings that we're having in February.
Yep.
Okay.
So again,
Why
we're
don't you
really trying to
post
get,
it?
I would like to get a lot of good comments on,
Mhm.
you know, how this
That's
is
the
going so
open to
that,
public comment. Is
Yeah,
that
they're
how-
all- I
yeah.
mean, it's
Well,
all
I
open.
meant, okay.
yeah, but we want to I think part of our job is to try to create we've decided that we want to do a license. Part of the committee's job is to create a balanced license that we can put before the voters to decide whatever they want.
So I just, when the voters decide, will they be deciding on this entire document?
Yeah.
Or on sections of it?
All of it.
So it's all or nothing?
It's all or nothing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey,
Although
no.
we could. No, I'm just
No.
kidding.
No. Noel,
That'll be a different warrant articles.
Yeah.
Yes. Jared.
when you post it online, can you do like they do for the articles, they put a little note on the side that says this is under discussion, we're talking about changes to this, it's sort of a,
So I have a draft watermark and a discussion draft and then a version and then a thing that says discussion draft only at the bottom. Is that enough? Or do you want me to put more?
I'm looking at the bottom here, hang on. Well, I was thinking, since we're gonna be working on licensing, just put, this is something that we're working on still, and we'd appreciate your comments.
Put on the side.
Yeah, so I can put something on there that makes it
Fine.
additionally clear.
It makes
Yeah.
it makes it look less like we were already set in stone on this.
Absolutely. Sure, I'll work on that.
Noel,
Yes,
what you're gonna post online is with the revisions that have been made tonight.
yes. Yep. I cannot promise it's gonna be online tomorrow, but we'll try to get it this week. Good,
Thank you.
all right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.